Want to build your career with CMI confidence? It all starts with the tools at your fingertips. CMI creates workplaces full of inspiring leaders. With its on-demand resources, network of mentors and industry-leading accreditations. Search CMI Confidence today.
This session is recorded and will be available on the CMI website and YouTube channel. Join the conversation by using the live chat box for your questions and comments. We'll answer as many as we can during the Q&A.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this month's Chartered Management Consultant Masterclass. Thank you for joining us. Today we will be joined by 4 guests who themselves have gone through the Chartered Management Consultant Assessment, and one of which has gone through the Associate Chartered Management Consultant Assessment, and they have very kindly agreed to share their experiences with you today on the assessment process, how they went about it, and their experience generally of undergoing it and the outcome. So my name's Emma Jones. I'm head of the Chartered Management Consultant Award here at CMI. And for those of you that aren't aware, Chartered Management Consultant Assessment, setting the scene for you, the assessment process occurs in 2 steps. The first step of which is the written submission. And the second step is the professional discussion. I'm not going to talk about it too much because I want our guest speakers today to share their experiences and really bring it to life for you. So without further ado, let's introduce our first guest speaker, Helen Jackson. Helen is, welcome Helen.
Emma.
Hi, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks Emma. Good afternoon everyone. I'm Helen Jackson. I'm an associate at Arup. I've been with Arup for almost 17 years. My role is now the co-deputy leader for the assets and operations strand of the advisory team in Arup Midlands.
Thanks Helen and welcome. Our second guest speaker is Stephen Humphreys. Good afternoon Stephen.
Afternoon, everyone. I'm Stephen. I'm a director in Baringa's government practice. I've been at Baringa for 6 years and I've been in consulting for about 15 years, something like that.
Great. Welcome, Stephen. Our third guest speaker is Claudio Costa. Good afternoon.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. So my name is Claudio Costa. I'm a consulting director currently at ChMC. So I'm responsible to engage with clients and help them to go through their solving their problems mostly in the telco arena. I've been doing consulting for a long time, and as I said, I did the qualification route for the Chartership of Management Consultant.
Thank you, Claudio, and welcome. And our fourth guest speaker, Gustavo Poggi.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Yes, so my name is Gustavo Poggi. I'm a senior management consultant here at Arcadis. I have 10 years of work experience, but I'm new to the industry, so I have only 3 years of consultancy industry. And yes, as Emma said, I have applied for the associate level, so I'm happy to share my experience. So thank you for inviting me.
Wonderful. Welcome all, and thank you for agreeing to share your experience with our audience today. As I introduced briefly there, the assessment process is in 2 steps. So you had the written submission and you had the professional discussion. Now, each of you came to the assessment via different routes. Helen and Stephen, you applied for ChMC by the experienced professional route. How did you come to apply in the first place? What made you want to apply for ChMC?
From my perspective, to be honest, Emma, I happened upon it by chance. Circumstances for me as I was on maternity leave when Arup were having a big push to have many consultants within the company to be chartered management consultants. So I was lucky enough to be added to the cohort. When I came back to work, they said, by the way, you've got 3 months to submit your submission. So it was by chance that I came across this, but I'm very grateful that I had been given the opportunity to do it. I don't know, Stephen, you may have had different experience.
Yeah, so there wasn't the same kind of top-down in Baringa, but a number of other of my colleagues did it. I support the kind of professionalization approach that the CMI and the MCA are taking of consulting. As I said, it's an industry I've worked in for many years, and I'm really kind of passionate about the value it adds. And I thought that was a good thing to do, to get some recognition of the work I've done, and the experience I've had, and the impact I've had with clients.
Thank you both, and some good points there. You know, it's what sets you apart as a management consultant from other management consultants. You know, it's not a regulated industry. There are no professional recognitions, if you like, other than chartership, which is aligning you with a lot of your colleagues, you know, in accounting, engineering. I hear it all the time, you know, what's for us, what's for the management consultants, and here it is. Claudia, you went through the qualified route. So how did you come to apply for chartered management consultant?
Yeah, so the company I was previously, so Entity Data, so there was a strategic decision to start to bring consultants through the chartership. So I was part of the second cohort, and so I kind of knew what the first cohort was going through. So it was good learnings. And that, yeah, I think that strategy was just to, you know, it's similar to what Stephen and Ellen said. I mean, the companies are making an investment in professionalizing their consultant base. So that was exactly what we did. And for me was really interesting, because the qualification route gave me, before I got into the submission and the professional discussion, so the actual qualification, it gave me about 18 months of training. So across 7 different modules, different topics. And that was very interesting, because it was almost like a journey of self, you know, of discovery or rediscovery, sometimes confirmation of that what I was doing was correct, some other times realizing, you know what, there's another better way to do things. So that was a good learning experience as well. Yeah, so it was, you know, it was very useful. You know, it helped me to find also my voice as a consultant, and just, you know, I think that, like we all saying, just really helped me to elevate myself as a consultant, as a professional.
Thank you, Claudio. And Gustavo, how did you come about it? Because Arcadis, I think all of your firms actually are either already accredited organizations or undergoing accreditation. Gustavo, what was your experience of coming to the Associate Award?
Well, as I said before, I'm new to the industry. So for me, it was everything related to growth. So it was credibility within my organization, credibility for my clients. You know, it helps with the personal branding, with your bids. It also helps with your confidence. So it's great to have the accreditation. I'm lucky that my company promotes it. And it's a very simple process, step by step. Obviously, it takes a lot of effort and time. But I was lucky that I was guided by a sponsor or by a counselor. So it was the process was quite easy to follow in my case.
Easy to follow. That's nice. That's good to hear. Helen, your face says not so much.
I think having done it and looking back, yes, it is easier to follow. The questions are quite simple, and it is down, certainly for mine and Stephen's side of things, it's down to just what we have experienced, what we've done. But in the heat of the moment, I certainly found it difficult to order things and to make sure you got the right representation of experience across the competencies within the word limit. So, but yeah, I think it's as easy or as difficult as you make it. But certainly, perhaps on the tips I wish I knew before I started is keep it simple. Don't overthink the questions. Just write down what you've done and what you're capable of, and it will flow through. Just have the belief of that.
Okay, so the written submission is as easy as you make it.
Yeah.
Ooh, let's Stephen.
Well, I probably agree with that. I spent about 2 years talking about doing it and having conversations with colleagues about doing it and never actually getting around to sit down and do it. So I made a huge meal out of it. And then I was fortunate or unfortunate enough, depending on your interpretation, to need ankle surgery following a sport injury in the spring. And once I'd got off the harder drugs, I used the second week convalescing to write my submission. So I had 2 weeks off work, and the first week I couldn't think straight, and the second week I wrote my submission. And then I kind of re-reviewed it once I was back at work, shared it with my partner sponsor, and it was done, and it was simple. And the years I'd spent thinking I want to get around to this, when will I have the time? I thought if I'd put together all the time I'd spent thinking about it and talking about it, I would have written it and got it done much sooner.
Okay, so some great points there. And we're always asked, how long does it take? I haven't got the time. How long does it take to write this submission? Okay, we know the professional discussion. We know the time for that. It's an hour, unless you're doing the depth interview. But how long does it take to get all this, 7 to 10 years sometimes of experience onto paper, and within a limited word count, which is often even more difficult than writing reams and reams of text? Let's ask Claudio. Claudio, you did the qualified route, and the submission for that, the written submission for that, is identical to that which Ellen and Stephen followed. So you would have had the same experience. How long did it take you to write your submission?
Yeah, so it's very similar. So so it took me, I think that altogether it might have been a couple of weeks to write it, but to one extent I had an advantage, right? Because as I was going through the qualified route, and I was going through the different modules that are aligned with the framework, that gave me more time to think about my actual examples, right? Because if you look at the answers that you need to provide to the qualification, they are based on what have you done? What's your experience? Demonstrate that you are capable, that you've achieved something, that you've used, So having gone through the qualification route, and I think there was a question about how did it help on my practical work. I mean, that was it, right? Was looking at what have I done over 18 months. I was able to write it down chunk by chunk. And then when I got to the qualification questions, I mean, yes, there was still some work because you have to consider the amount of word counting and all of that. But I already had a good foundation, right? It was still challenging, and I still had to think about it. It was not a easy journey, but it gave me, I would say, a good starting point. So I think that from that perspective, I was lucky.
Okay, lucky that you went through the qualification. It took 18 months of hard work, but the output provided you all the information you needed to submit for ChMC. Now, just to be clear, the qualification and the training were not what you were assessed upon. All of you were assessed, any chartered management consultant is assessed on their experience and their evidence of their engagement with clients over the set number of years expected for the routes that you're applying for. So it's not evidence of your training, it's evidence of your actual practical management consulting experience. So Claudio, your qualified route put you on a very fast track 18-month qualification, but you still had to demonstrate the years of experience. Gustavo, you were on your in-house, so Arcadis's own in-house accredited development pathway towards chartership. So very similar to Claudio, but you were assessed against the applied level competencies because you have 3 years experience. Mm-hmm. How did you find the submission, writing the submission?
Well, obviously it's a challenge because you have alongside the writing it and thinking about it, project work. So I would say you need to be very committed in doing it, very disciplined. Play to your strengths. You need to block your calendar. I'm an early bird, so it's like 1 hour before starting work, I'm going to do it. You need to do this step by step because if not, it's a monster. It's 54 competencies, I think, like more than 10,000 words that you need to write. So that's one thing that I did. Also, a lot of colleagues did it. So, I asked them how it was any tips. So one great tip was have like a matrix of all the projects, all the things that you have done, the outcomes, and how they link to the competencies. So that will facilitate then how, the written part. Also to read the question and what they ask a lot of the times it was, okay, I'm going to write about this. But actually, if I go into detail into the competence, I need to show specific words or highlight specific things. So always refer to the question. Am I answering the question? I think that's something that is very valuable. So, yeah.
Great tip. Read the competencies. It's all transparent. You know exactly what you're being assessed against, and all of you were assessed against the same competencies at different levels, so associate, award, or chartered, but you were all assessed against the same competencies. But interesting, we've got Stephen that took some time out over a week of convalescing. We got Helen that did it coming back from maternity leave and juggling it with work. Claudio did it after the qualification route, but feels he had an advantage because of the output from the qualification gave him content. And Gustavo spent some time really reflecting over quite a lengthy submission, but having the advantage of colleagues that have been through the process to support you. The matrix idea is great. Thinking about, and this is, Helen's nodding there, thinking about Helen, Stephen, 7 years plus experience, that's a lot to reflect upon, isn't it? And thinking, okay, which of these engagements really showcase me and really, demonstrate my engagement and my inputs and the impact I've had with clients. Because although, Gustavo, you said, there's 53, 54 competencies, it's not one piece of evidence to every single competence, because, you could have one engagement that evidences a number of the competencies. Okay, if you were to give somebody one top tip on writing the submission, what would it be? Stephen, from an experience.
Start.
Yes.
So you agree with that, Helen?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know from colleagues who were given the same opportunity as me and said, I don't have the time. I look back on it now thinking, oh, if only they had tried. I think just starting it and doing, I totally resonate with what Gustavo said about the matrix, because that helps in writing the application and in the interview as well, to work out where you may be slightly weaker in some parts than others. So just get it down on a piece of paper and just go.
Just go for it.
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant.
I would add to have some goals, mini goals. It's very easy to say, okay, I start, but then tomorrow I have a long day. I'm gonna do it tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. So have specific goals. Okay, I'm gonna finish part 2, in 3 weeks. I'm gonna do the part 3 next week. I have some accountability partner that helps a lot as well. So I have, monthly meetings with my assessor, my counselor. So that helped me. So I need to bring something, to the meeting. Yeah. So that helps a lot.
Brilliant. Some really good tips there. As consultants, we are good at working to deadlines. So setting yourself a deadline, great. Anything to add to that, Claudia?
Yeah, no, I think I agree. I mean, it's the start, and having a deadline for me, it's important. And you also need to. So I try to be quite methodic with these things. So because the assessment is split, the framework has different areas of competencies. Yeah. I found out that it was easy to just tackle one at a time. There's also another thing which, to an extent, is you always have the question. Your own challenge, which is, well, I've done X number of projects, so I have a finite number of projects. How can I, out of those projects, extract answers and demonstrate, that I've done that for all of these competencies? So sometimes you don't think about these things until you have to think about these things, right? And when you look at the project, I mean, there's always a stakeholder management aspect or a sustainability aspect or something that you could derive, even if it's just a flavor, it's sometimes enough to just expand. So you really need to do that introspection and just dig deep. I think it was very useful for me. It was a bit almost like cathartic, to be honest.
I've heard that, I've heard that from a lot of consultants, just that time to reflect and think, how did I get here? What have I done? And then when you can see it down on paper, what you've actually done, the impact you've had with your clients, really is a cathartic exercise. Okay, so For the audience's benefit, once you've submitted your written submission, so all of you had to submit your written submission, your assessor would have received it, and the first thing they'd have done is reviewed it to make sure there are no breaches of confidentiality, because you can't mention client names. Once they've done that, they will then look for sufficient evidence to ensure that you have the experience and you've covered all the competencies, and then they'll invite you to a professional discussion. Now, if you haven't, on your first submission, covered all of the competencies or demonstrated your years of experience, the assessor might refer your submission back to you for additional evidence. Did anybody experience that?
No.
No,
Amazing.
I know of others who did, and in those cases, it seemed relatively quick to resolve. It wasn't that they didn't have the experience. It was because how they had presented the information in the application, it hadn't come across. So it was more what they'd written was the issue, rather than the fact they weren't experienced enough to achieve the level of qualification.
Great, good point. So it's not seen as a bad thing. If you have if your submission is referred back to you, it's an opportunity to use some more words, because you've all mentioned the word count. You could use some more words to give some more evidence. So your assessor wants to take you to a professional discussion, and they'll arrange that with you at a convenient time to suit you. And it's either but it's between a 1 and 2 hour discussion, depending on the route you're going. But let's assume we're all going through the standard route, standard professional discussion. They've arranged the meeting with you. Reflecting back, how did you feel before your professional discussion, and how did you prepare? Let's start with the experienced professionals.
Hey, Steve, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I can go first.
Yeah.
I reread the competencies and I reread my written statement. But I was also just pretty confident that I knew my favourite subject, right? Myself. So I was able to talk about my experience and what I'd done and the impact I'd had with clients and what I was passionate about, and across, I was confident I knew the subject matter. I think, though, I would say my conversation was a bit more like an interview than a discussion.
Okay.
And all I mean by that is clearly the assessor is assessing you. And I think I'd thought on the way in that because it's called a discussion, I'd sort of forgotten as I was preparing that it really was an assessment. And so I think in the first kind of 3 or 4 minutes, I kind of calibrated to, oh, no, hang on, this is an assessment. You need to be a little bit more structured in how you're answering against all the different things that you're doing. And I would say the assessor was quite helpful in identifying areas as we were going where he thought maybe I hadn't given as full an answer as he wanted to hear. And that was good because I could tell him, right? Like I did have a bit like Helen's described about her colleagues with written bits being returned to them. They had the experience, they'd maybe just not explained it. That just allowed me to give further examples of things aligned to those competencies. So I really enjoyed the conversation. It was a really nice thing to reflect on the work I've done in my career and the impact it's had with clients, and to see that it meets that standard. So it was a very, very positive experience, and I just wish I'd been a bit more turned on in the first 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you for that and for the honesty. Helen, how did your experience compare?
I would say perhaps a bit better than Steve's in the first instance, but I certainly found it a discussion rather than an interview in my professional discussion. We mentioned earlier about the matrix and mapping against the competencies. So I went back to that original mapping that I had done for the written submission and worked out where I was weakest or felt weakest in terms of explaining. So I made sure I I was most confident in the bits that I was originally least confident in, if that makes sense. The other thing that I took great benefit from was within the company, because a number of us were going through the same process, is talking to other people who had done it recently, so to find out what the regular questions were to expect, and that was really, really helpful. Things like, well, how do you justify your day rate? Why do clients want you rather than anybody else? So it's just giving those specific questions just time to think about and have not a practiced answer, but to know what you're going to say in a confident and succinct manner. I think that really did me good stead in the discussion when it came to it.
Okay, so good preparation, good advice there. Claudio, your professional discussion. So you've been through your qualification. Qualification helped you to create your submission, but now you're in the standard assessment for a ChMC. How did you prepare?
So, I mean, it was, I think, pretty much like what Stephen and Ellen did, which is just review what you wrote, because, you know, if you wrote it, it's bound to be correct, and just making sure that I was, you know, and as Stephen was saying, I mean, I was talking about me, right? So I know me, I know what I did. So I, you know, even if I haven't wrote it in the way that I wanted to express, I could always, during the assessment, during the professional conversation, talk about it. So that was my preparation. But also I had I was lucky because there have been a few people that had gone through the same journey before me, so I could talk with them. I could understand what would the assessor ask for. We also had a coach, which was very, very useful, so that helped. When we got to the conversation, it was a discussion, right? It felt less of an interview like Stephen experienced, but it felt really like a discussion, you know, very open, very honest. Say, okay, I've been through what you've provided. There are some points that I would need a bit more of, you know, explanation, a bit more of detail. So it was a really good conversation. It was a good experience. Yeah, that was my experience.
Okay, so 3 very good experiences. Gustavo, keep us going.
It was a good experience. I think I'd gone in. I think I'd gone in too relaxed. Like I'm not like it. I don't mean it in a derogatory way to say it was an interview, but it was an assessment, right? It was a professional assessment, and it was a conversation. It was backwards and forwards. It was helpful. It was a very positive experience. I suppose I'm just saying I just could have been a little bit more head in the game going into it.
It's a really good point to make, though, Stephen, honestly, because you know, the written submission is only part of the assessment. You know, it's like applying for a job or tendering for a piece of work. You've then got to meet the client, and you've got to justify.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that's a really good way of comparing it. Like, because in, you know, I know the minimum requirement is what, 7 or 8 years experience for experienced. I was on 13, 14 when I was doing it. It's very easy to think, oh, it's a walk in the park. But you have to think properly. You have to work out whether you have got all those competencies.
Yeah.
And I think that's all I'm referring to, really, was I really am being assessed, and I really do have to make sure that I have demonstrated the competencies across my written and oral submissions.
Yeah. You got to show up.
Got to show up.
Yep. Yeah. So, Gustavo, you went through exactly the same process.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you were assessed against different level of competencies, and it was based on 3 years experience, not 13 years of experience. So how did your professional discussion compare?
Well, so I did prepare a lot. So obviously you need to control what you can control. You don't know who's going to interview you. You don't know what the questions you're going to get. So you can prepare, okay. I was lucky that I had a pool of questions like Helen. So I did prepare a lot, some responses. I'm not very good at improvising, and you have only 1 hour, so you need to be very structured on what you're going to say. It needs to meet the specific requirements for the competencies. So I did prepare a lot. I was lucky enough to have a sponsor to rehearse. I realized that, you know, knowing a little bit what I was going to say didn't work, because the practice was, let's say, it didn't go very well. So I did prepare more and more. So I was lucky that my interview was more like a discussion. So one question I replied, but then he was, oh, okay. So I also did that. So it was more like a conversation. So it felt very easy. It wasn't that structured as Stephen's experience. So, but yeah, I did prepare a lot with my colleagues and also with my sponsor to be able to bring that experience, right?
Okay, so prepare.
Yeah.
Prepare. I think what's coming through here is prepare, take it seriously, show up. But you're talking about yourself.
Yeah.
So, Stephen said, favorite subject. I think some people find it really hard to say I did this, I did, because, we're in a consulting team, we're representing the firm, we very much in day-to-day work talk about we, us, the organization. You're promoting the bigger picture. But in this instance, this is all about you, what impact you've had. So we want to hear I. So it is a chance to talk about what you've done and reflect on your own experience. So if you were to leave this audience with one tip, what would it be? For the whole process, what would it be?
I've probably said mine already, but I think if it's the experienced route you're going for, and you think you're comfortably over the line from an experience perspective, just get on with it. It is a much more. It is a straightforward process where you have to write in a structured way about yourself over not a tremendous number of words. So pick your best project or two, pick the couple of internal initiatives you're working on, and you'll probably find you're 80% of the way there by writing those. And then you've probably got friends or colleagues you can calibrate or ask to give a review of your submission to get it ready and over the line and get it done. It is quite clearly, it's quite different if you're taking one of the other routes, but if you're taking the experienced route, get on with it.
Thanks, Stephen.
For me, MS time management. I don't work very well with the flow, so I need to know when I'm going to do stuff, what time, particularly. I'm very structured in that way. So like today, tomorrow, I'm going to do this. Next day, I'm going to do that. And that builds, compound effect. You get the submission done in 1 month, 2 months, but it doesn't feel like you work that much. It's just a little bit every day. That's the key. It's difficult, right? Because you need discipline, but I would say that's the key.
Great. Thanks, Gustavo. That's a really good tip, especially for people working on an accredited program. Start now. Start now, even if you're not ready in, a year. Start gathering your evidence, start structuring it. So when you come to do your submission, you're ready to go. Top tip from you, Claudio.
So, I mean, if you're doing the qualification route like I did, right, I would add, so I agree with what Stephen and Gustavo said so far, right? It's the submission, the preparation, I mean, just get it done, right? But if you're doing the qualification route, I think that you just have to, just enjoy the process, right? Because there's so much that you're going to learn. And you can create on top of it, right? I mean, I did that, as I was telling you before, Emma. So all the work I did over 18 months, so 7 modules, lots of, research, lots of writing, I've turned that into articles, right? So I've created I found my own voice as part of, as going through the qualification route. So you have to, yes, it's 18 months and you have to put the effort and all of that, but you have to do that anyway. So you just have to find a way to enjoy and use that to just make yourself better as a consultant.
Okay. Thank you, Claudia. So a bit of advice there, both about the qualification, but also about the assessment process. Helen, anything to add from the experienced professional perspective?
I would say keep it simple. If you have the credentials to go this route in the first place, then you've done sort of 70% of the work really in the first place. Yeah. Keep your approach simple. Bullet points will be your friend as far as the word limit is concerned, and don't overthink the process.
Great.
All the things that I didn't do to start with.
What you wish you'd have known before you started.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so whilst we've been talking, our audience have been asking some questions, and we've had some pre-submitted questions. So if we can turn to those. We had a question from Lisa. They've asked, if there was just one piece of advice you would give anyone trying to progress into management consulting, what would it be?
I'm happy to take the first answer on this, Emma. I think I feel with management consultancy, emotional intelligence is a really powerful tool to be a successful consultant. So being aware of your own emotional intelligence and recognizing that the people around you are your biggest tool to delivering an outcome for clients. So you're the leader potentially as a management consultant, but you need the support network around you. And to progress in management, you can't do it on your own. Basically, you have to have the support and the belief with everyone with you.
Thanks, Helen. Great answer. Would anybody else like to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the advice I'd give does vary depending on the person's context, whether they're looking to get into management consultancy as a first career, or whether they have been working in industry or the public sector and are looking to get into consulting afterwards. I think it is different. For people that are trying to get into it as a first job or immediately after a kind of MBA or an MSc or something like that. My first job was as a recruitment consultant for consulting firms, and the advice I'd always give is that there are masses of small and medium-sized consulting firms that would love to hire excited, motivated people who are straight out of qualifications. So get on the phone to them, go and speak to them, be proactive. That's what clients love in a consultant is proactivity and intelligence and interest. So kind of go and do that alongside applying for the milk round bits and pieces. Or come do an internship at Baringa. Our applications are open for next summer.
This is not a recruitment area, but okay, thank you. We have another question from Fabio. What are the pros and cons of having the certification, and how will it benefit us, the real world implications of the certification, and how to make the most of the certification? So, why is it important to you to be chartered? What are the benefits?
I can take on that one, Emma. So for me, I'm new to the industry. As I say, for me, as I said before, it's growth. It was credibility to the company, credibility to the clients. You can use it in bids. You can use it to promote yourself in social media. You can use it as in networking events like this one, to share experiences and knowledge. So I think there are a lot of pros, cons. I mean, apart from the difficulty of the time and effort that it takes, I don't see any con if your company is promoting the accreditation. Why not just take it, do it?
Yeah. I mean, the other thing from a benefit perspective, Alan, is that I think it provides also an extra layer of quality assurance to the clients we work with. Okay, because I mean, having and I know this because my current company, CAP, we are part of the MCA and all that. So it's really to bring that the additional level of quality. Say, right, we have consultants that follow a structured training and learning. So they are client centric. They are focused on emotional intelligence. So they have the right tools, and it's all for the greater good of the company. So that for me is one of the key benefits, I would say, is that level of quality that just brings with it. I mean, I think cons at this point probably still early days, so I don't have any as well.
And can I just add to that actually about the quality? It's also credibility. I certainly felt, because if there's anyone listening to this who is already chartered with another organization, and you think, well, why should I bother getting this one? It's the credibility in the profession that you're in and the stage of your career at this moment in time, which hadn't occurred to me until the opportunity was put forward to be a chartered management consultant. I've been a management consultant for nearly 17 years, but actually now I've got it, there is a huge amount of kudos and doors that have opened, because I'm now a chartered person in the work that I now do on a day-to-day basis. It doesn't matter that I'm a chartered engineer or a chartered logistician. It's now my stage in the career is management consultancy is the top priority.
Okay, and
I'd have a build, which is no cons. I agree with the other pros that people have given. I think the most important pro for me was the opportunity to reflect on my career and to frankly feel pretty satisfied and going, oh wow, actually this is cool. Like, I think work can feel intense at times when you're in the middle of a difficult client project, and so to reflect at the end or at the stage of career I'm at and look back at those things and go, wow, that's pretty good. I've reached a competent standard here, and that's something to be proud of. That is the biggest pro of it for me, is the personal satisfaction and the opportunity for personal reflection. So I wouldn't even agree on the comment of the con being the time to do it, because the time to do it was the benefit.
Great points there. I didn't pay you guys to say this. There's some great points there, and actually reinforcing a lot of the feedback we get. We do a lot of evaluation to find out, really what answering this question. What is in it for you? Is this a valuable thing to do? And if you think about the 1,500 plus chartered management consultants we currently have, and rising quickly. A majority of those have gone by the experienced professional route, which means that they've got a minimum of 7 years experience. And the outcome, or the evaluation, is showing one of the main benefits for them was an improvement in self-confidence and self-awareness, having gone through the process. So it really is the cathartic bit that you were mentioning, that time to reflect and understand, how did I get here? There's some really good points about client recognition as well, and industry recognition of what it means to be chartered. Thank you. We've got another question from Rachel, or sorry, apologies. I think it's Rachel. How do you navigate and seek jobs as a consultant in academia? Is anybody here placed to answer that one?
I'm afraid that's not my area.
No. Okay, so maybe, Rachel, if you contact us at CMI, we can find somebody that can help with that. Okay, whilst we've been in the discussion, we've had some questions raised on the live chat. Algernon Templeton, hello everyone. Claudia, did the written route provide an added framework supporting your practical work?
Yeah, so did, and I saw that, and I answered. So it did, right? And also it also helped me to experiment with existing, consulting frameworks, and also develop my own, right? So that for me was good, because you always need to be creating something new, because if you keep using the same models, the same approaches over and over again, at some point it just gets stale and they stop working, right? So you need to bring something fresh. So there's always a lot of fresh thinking going on every day, and going through this route helped me to read that, understand, and then create my own. So develop some of those frameworks, which helped me on the practical support. One of the things I did most recently was a cost transformation canvas, which I've been working on for over a year now. So that was something that
Oh, we've lost Claudia. Hopefully you'll come back.
Hi, Claudia.
Let's move on to Sam Barnett's question. How long does it take?
How long's a piece of string? In Europe, we were advised it would take around about 16 hours or 2 days. In my personal experience, it probably took nearer 25, 30 hours, but I think that was more because I didn't spend all of the time on it as in a focused environment. There's always something else going on. But yeah, I think it would probably vary between individuals. I don't know whether the others have similar or different views on that.
Yeah, it was faster for me. I think it was partly because I had over the 2 years I'd spent thinking about doing it. I had come to 1 or 2 of these webinars. I had read the stuff. I had read other people's submissions within the firm, and so when I had my convalescence, it probably took, I don't know, 6 to 8 hours maybe of writing, editing, and re-reviewing time, and then some edits following internal review from my sponsor. But then I was doing it, as you said, in concentrated focus time where I wasn't doing anything else and I wasn't being distracted by anything else. And I could take as much time in that week as I wanted to do it, and I'd broken the back of it in one kind of 4-hour stint, and then a few other hours later in the week finishing it off to the point I was happy.
So quite different approaches there. I know you're going to have a totally different perspective.
Yeah. I'm quite jealous about, I mean, for me, it took like 6 or 8 weeks. I don't know how many hours it took me. But yeah, I did a little bit every day. I mean, I'm counting also the rehearsal, the practice, everything into that. But yeah, like 2 months. I would say start early so you don't have to do, 5 hours in one day. Just do a little bit every day. That's the key.
Okay, and you just to be clear, your application was far lengthier because you went via an on-program application, which requires evidence against every competence, whereas the experienced professional route is a much more simple template, although in some respects a little bit more difficult to do because you're summarizing your experience all into one very short paragraph, whereas the on-program, you have far greater word count to express yourself. Algernon asks, is the professional discussion completed online? Yes, it is, in a very similar format to this. We use Google Meet to set up the meeting, but you can choose your own tool if Google Meet is not acceptable. It's done at a time and a place to suit you. We ask that you're in a quiet room, undisturbed, and that you can set aside the time for the professional discussion. And a really good hint there is plan some time before and after it, just in case there's any technical issues, or you don't want to be focused on your next client and that interrupt or stop you really performing and turning up to your own professional discussion. So make the time, be present. Algernon also asks, even with experience, would the written route provide extra knowledge if not completed? Did you feel you missed anything? I think this was possibly also aimed at Claudio, who has dropped off the call, unfortunately. But in terms of the written submission, if not completed, did you feel you missed anything? Not really sure. Does anybody else interpret that question?
Every route's written, isn't it, in some form? There isn't an option to not have a written route.
No, you have to submit a written application. The submission itself, the template differs, but the evidence you're expected to present is the same. Sam Barnett asks, can freelance consultants apply? Of course. Provided you meet the requirements, then you can apply directly online. CMI have a online application page where you can apply online. It will take you to all of the templates and guidance. And as soon as you're signed up, everybody has access to their own help and support hub to help you depending on the route you're going. Now, everybody here currently are within firms with other people that have done the assessment, so can learn from that practice. But as a freelance, you also have access to help and support from CMI via a unique dedicated website. A question from Rachel, can academics working on research apply? Well, if we reflect on what we mean by a management consultant, it's somebody that is engaged in providing advice and guidance to a third party in helping them with their management of their organization. I think it's been referred, somebody recently answered a question, what is a management consultant? And their response was an organization doctor. They help organizations solve a problem or an issue or a pain point. So as an academic, if it's purely academic, then you wouldn't be engaged in, day-to-day real-life management consulting in supporting third-party organisations. So currently there isn't a pure academic route to ChMC. You have to be a operational management consultant who is currently and has been engaged in client work. Okay. I think that's all the questions we have from the audience today. We do have I think we've had a few more minutes left. So I think I'm going to ask our guest speakers here. I'm not going to put you on the spot, but I'm going to ask you, one of the questions I get asked quite often is, as a management consultant, I'm a technical expert in my field. That's why I'm being brought in, because I am top of my game. I can really advise. I'm a trusted advisor in my particular field. So as you each have technical specialisms or backgrounds, how did you showcase yourself as a fully rounded management consultant? What sort of technique did you use to, yes, demonstrate your experience and expertise, but how did you make sure you did it broad enough to cover all of the management consulting competencies?
Well, there are certain skills that are general, right? So problem solving, stakeholder management. And you're going to bring all of that, even if you're just talking about your technical expertise, you're going to be solving something for a client. You don't need to think strategically. So when you bring that response, you're going to bring all of those competencies as well.
Okay. Yep. So they are written, the competencies are open, transparent for everybody to see. And as you say, Gustavo, they are written in a generic way, so they can be applied to any technical specialism or industry.
I think the experience route that Stephen and I did, I tried to use the two big questions about specific projects to the best advantage. Hence, looking at the matrix at the beginning, which project represented the most of the competencies, because the projects were specific to my specialisms, but it also gave me the chance to look at the broader picture and my approach as a consultant. But also in the first question about your career to date and what your role is currently, use that as well. For anything that you haven't covered elsewhere, just put in, well, I've also done this, this, and this, and that can help to prompt your interviewer or your assessor later on. So it opens up the door to give you the chance to present everything, even if you feel day to day you're a specialist in one area. There's one question, Emma, if I may, that was written in the chat, and it talked about DEI frameworks and how the CMI ensure to promote inclusion and equity, even if your organisation doesn't necessarily have a framework in place for this. Well, that's your biggest opportunity. There is a specific question around that, and you don't have to be an expert in D&I to do it. You just have to be, I would say, a good person that is in touch with your team and your workforce and your clients to understand how to promote these things. And it's part of the ethics and the values of the CMI, and it presumably is part of an individual's values as well to do it. So going back to keep it simple, don't try and overthink things, just see what you can present within your own experiences that bring across these kind of things.
Thanks, Helen. And you're absolutely right. One of the core competencies within the framework itself assesses against DE&I. So you would be expected to demonstrate something around that in terms of your engagements, both in terms of how your organization deals with it, but then, part of consulting is you're consulting with a third party and making sure those two cultures align. So yeah, it's core, it's threaded throughout the competency framework. Yeah, some good points. Anybody else have an issue with not getting away from your technical specialism, but making sure that you weren't wedded to just talking about your technical specialism?
I hope this isn't me being obtuse or inflammatory, but I think one of the things I really liked about the opportunity to become chartered management consultant through this program is that it recognizes the breadth and strength of what being a management consultant is. And only part of being a management consultant is your technical specialism. So if I was going, if I was being obtuse, I'd go, well, maybe you don't fully get what it is to be a management consultant if you can't get away from your technical specialism, right? We're there to help clients solve problems. We're there to help them implement changes in a really broad sense. And as Gustavo said, that's a really broad and specific skill set that is assessed for in this program. And technical competence is really important, but as are the kind of EQ that Helen talked about earlier, and the rest of the competencies assessed in the framework.
Yeah. So it is open. I mean, chartership for management consultants is open to everybody. It's not industry specific. It's not firm specific. It's as Sam's asked, is it open to freelance consultants? Yes, it is. There are standard competencies that have been very, very clearly identified, which articulate what a good management consultant should do in this industry and what the standard is expected. And if you can demonstrate that with the required years of experience, then anybody can apply. Okay. Would you like to leave any last words for our audience before we wrap this up? I think I want to echo Stephen's sentiment. Just start the process.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it would be just enjoy the journey, because it's, what you get at the end is so much bigger than the effort and, that you have to put. So just enjoy it. It's your next step in your career as a consultant.
Amazing. Thank you, everyone, for your time today. And thank you for our audience for your participation. More information is available via our website. So please log on, take a look, and get in touch if you have any extra questions. But other than that, thank you, everybody.
Don't forget, as a CMI member, you can find the latest management and leadership insights at managers.org.uk. If you're not yet a member, join our community to discover CMI Confidence with on-demand resources, our network of mentors, and industry-leading accreditations.